Well, good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you're sitting right now. Welcome to the March 19th edition of the On Track Live webinar for NCTA. Appreciate everybody taking the time to be here. Also appreciate your flexibility in moving it from the regular time yesterday. Some unavoidable schedule conflicts popped up. Just a schedule note, next month there will be no webinar because we'll all be together in Jekyll Island for the conference. And then in May, we will come back. We'll have Russell Kraus, or excuse me, Rob Kraus, Rob Russell from Russell Kraus. I'm sorry, trying to keep all the names straight here. Who's the guy who's been writing this 5-part series in Railway Age about the UP-NS merger. Should be a really great conversation in May on that one. The merger application should be out by then, so it'll be good timing. But we'll be changing the date on that one as well. We'll be moving it up 1 week to May 13th. So watch your inbox. We'll send you some notifications on that. But and it'll also be, the schedule change will also be in the On Track. But appreciate everybody's flexibility in changing it up for today's session. Just a little bit of shameless self-promotion before we dive into the conversation here. Reminding everybody that the NCTA spring and O&M conferences are right around the corner now, coming up in April. The early bird registration discounts disappear tomorrow. So if you haven't already registered for one or both of the conferences, I urge you to get that done tomorrow and save you a few pennies. Also, the note on the hotel situation. It's going to be a very well attended conference. The NCTA room block at the Westin has sold out. There are still rooms available at the Westin at rack rate. There's also a Home2 Suites by Hilton that is literally right across the parking lot from the hotel. So if you're a Hilton Point collector or want to move over there, it'll be very convenient to the hotel. And if anybody has trouble with their hotel reservations at all, feel free to reach out to Melinda and she can troubleshoot for you. One other schedule note for the conferences. As you know, we'll be doing our 6th annual scholarship scramble at the golf course there at Jekyll Island. Scholarship benefiting the NCTA scholarship program. If you're not a golfer, though, and we know there's some of you out there, Melinda's lined up an alternative social event alongside the golf tournament while the golfers go off and do their thing, whacking a little ball around. There will be a charcuterie board making session back at the hotel that you can sign up for. So if you've got spouses or if you're just not a golfer, like to learn, come have the hotel chef do some charcuterie instruction, and it gives you something you can take back to your room and nibble on for the rest of the conference. So encourage everybody to, Melinda will be sending out some more information on that special event as well here in the next day or so. But again, encourage everybody to get registered for the conference by tomorrow to save you some money. Got a great lineup. The UP-NS merger will be a big topic of conversation. We've got representatives for both UP and BNSF speaking on that. We'll have updates on the STB process. AAR will be there to speak. We'll have Vern Lund, who's CEO of NTEC, will be giving the utility keynote. And also have Blake Deely from the White House Energy Dominance Council will be there to talk about what's going on in the Trump administration, and that's something that Carl and I will probably get into here in just a little bit. So enough of the shameless self-promotion. Let's just dive into the conversation here. It's my pleasure to introduce to you Carl Moore. Really appreciate Carl taking the time to be with us today. He's a busy guy. He's the founder and chief executive officer of Powerscape Global. Carl has a deep background in coal, has worked in the Washington, D.C. area from way before the beginning of the war on coal. We'll talk a little bit about that. And was a key mover in the Kemper gasification project back in the day, which was a predecessor to what he's got going on now with Powerscape. And I don't want to spoil anything. There, we'll get into the conversation. Carl has also done his public service as a stint inside the EPA as director of the Air and Radiation Office inside EPA. So he's worked both for the industry and on the inside of the regulatory apparatus. So It's really appreciate it, Carl, that you take this amount of time to be with us and give us some background. Why don't you could we start by just having you fill out your resume a little bit more? I know you've been on both sides of the table with regard to some of the legal stuff that swirls around coal.
Well, John, in the category of shameless promotion, if I do well here, I want to let you know I'm available for Jekyll Island appearances any year.
Oh,
Yeah,
my goodness. Well, if
yeah,
you
yeah.
well, we will
Uh,
squeeze you in. I'll follow up
uh,
with you on that for certain.
well,
Appreciate that.
that would be for fun and relaxation, having lived in Georgia for a while. Well,
Good.
hi, everybody. Good afternoon. And John, it's a real pleasure. And I only wish I had your wonderful voice. Uh, I suffer from a bit of asthma, so I'm a little gravelly. My background is a little bit interesting, even for myself, because sometimes I look at it and say, how did this all happen? I started out early in life in Washington on the Hill and ended up in the U.S. Senate working for a couple of senators, a gentleman named Jeremiah Denton, who was an American hero, former admiral, and prisoner of war for 7.5 years. And he, and through the Judiciary Committee and Labor and Human Resources Committee, gave me my first experience in Washington over the course of about 6 years in the Senate. And then I went to work briefly in the Reagan administration as a essentially as a lobbyist for an assistant secretary who needed some things done. Then I left and went to I had gone to law school here in D.C. Went to the firm of Balch and Bingham, which is a really distinguished and good firm in the Southeast and a little bit broader these days. Worked for them, and our major client at that time was the Southern Company and its various operating companies. Pardon me, I warned you. Uh, they were a major client, and in 1987 they asked me to work on the coming Clean Air Act amendments. And this is now ancient history, but in 1987, the combined industry, and I'm talking everybody from aircraft to utilities and autos, we filibustered the Clean Air Act amendments of 1988 and successfully prevented their passage. But with the arrival of the Bush administration, the decision was to move forward on the Clean Air Act, and I was loaned to an organization called the Clean Air Act Working Group as counsel to help draft the provisions of the bill that were relevant to the utility industry and some other industries as well, but largely focused on utility issues. And so was there at the beginning, mostly working on air toxics, mercury, and SO2 and NOx and what we would do to control. And you'll remember that the 90 amendments were a seminal moment in environmental history because it was the first time we were going to use a cap and trade approach to controlling pollution. It was a very, very hard fought battle. We were at it for almost 2 years solid, and there was much work that was to be done. And at that time, and it was something that I thought I would see again, but I've never seen again, which is that every law firm, every um, advocacy firm, the entire town was consumed and frankly retained on the Clean Air Act. So this was a titanic battle, and it was a very huge public battle at the time. And the result of that was a compromise that really satisfied both sides. And it really led to the birth, frankly, of a good portion of the industry that serves you, which is the transport of Powder River Basin coal from the West. Um, Subsequently, I went into Southern Company as an executive responsible for litigation and public policy. Subsequently, became chief environmental counsel for Southern Company as well as senior vice president. And when we were planning on how to comply with the Clean Air Act at Southern Company at that time, when I was with them, the basic strategy was for Southern Company very interesting. It was titled BUBBA: burn, utilize, and buy allowances. And as a result of that, Miller, Scherer, big units down south were receiving vast quantities of PRB coal. Allowances were purchased where needed, and subsequent controls were many types of control that would have been necessary had we continued to use Eastern coal, including Alabama coal. Um, we would have had to install controls right away. And fast forward about, and the outworking of the Clean Air Act amendments, that took us about 8 years to do that. Well, right at the end of the Clinton administration, the environmental organizations and others decided that they really did not like the deal that we had all devised in the Clean Air Act amendments. And so in November of 1999, uh, EPA, Department of Justice, the Clinton administration launched the largest enforcement initiative in the history of the EPA aimed at, I believe, 8 of the largest utilities. And the allegation was that by doing the routine repairs and replacements and at our facilities, that we had knowingly and intentionally over the course of 20 years violated the Clean Air Act. And it was an astounding claim that a heavily regulated utility that hit utilities that mind their manners and or have sophisticated environmental components, that the allegation that we had knowingly violated the law for that period of time in doing these repairs and replacements and in some instances upgrades with new materials was shocking to us. When we were confronted with these allegations at EPA, we went in and we met with the folks from DOJ and EPA, and we mentioned to them that this was not the law and never had been the law, and that they were kind of making up a new theory that had never been tried in the courts, hadn't been put in regulations, and was not authorized in the 90 amendments. And their response was, frankly, one of the most astounding, awful, disturbing things that I've ever heard. Representatives of the United States government across the table from us said, "We don't care. We're not here to talk about the law. We are going to
Was
make
this
your life."
really the beginning of the war on coal, Carl?
Yes, this if you want to know the start date for the war on coal, it's I believe November 5th, 1999. That date was the beginning of what would turn out to be on and off really through the Biden administration, a 25-year war on a fuel. And subsequently, when I served in EPA in the Office of Air and Regulation responsible for air policy, what what we were saying about the law is this hiatus, this 25-year program or program that they embarked upon was unlawful. Their response to us when we told them that in 1999 is, "You'll never be able to stand the heat. We'll drag your name through the headlines, and you're going to settle with us. And our calculation is you owe us between $5 and $10 billion." So it was shocking and frankly a great team of folks both in the industry and then with the company that I was in with Southern Company. We fought that for 16 years, and they didn't prevail. We gave them all told $100,000 in some press releases for that they wanted with regard to some of the plants that we had already intended to do to close. And I may be telling a little bit more in the weeds, but the long story is we didn't accept it. We fought it, and in the end, we prevailed because we had a good judge in Alabama. We had some good precedent at the 11th Circuit, and as a result, we survived it. And so, my during that entire period, of course, coal was being attacked across the board. We had the Kivalina lawsuit, the Katrina lawsuit alleging, tort violations as a result of emissions of CO2 over the years. We had the Connecticut case. We also then had what they called the train wreck, and some of you may not remember it, but literally during the Obama administration, when the raft of regulations on nearly every aspect of utilization of coal were promulgated, the term of art and the press term for it at that time was that we were in the train wreck because there was simply no way you could do everything that they wanted you to do in every direction. And as a result, units were at risk of closure. It was an endless series of compromises. Some people settled on NSR. Some people chose how they were going to comply based upon all of the other attacks that were ongoing. And if I had to summarize that, and I know, John, this is one question, you're scared to death. How many can he do? But with your one question, I would tell you this. What that period showed is, I believe, that the statute, the Clean Air Act, was misused. And it was misused because the Clean Air Act was never supposed to be a device for eliminating a fuel type. It's supposed to regulate emissions. But there was conscious intent, coordination with the environmental groups and others to attack coal across the board, including going after our financing, our governmental affairs activities, everything. There was a concerted activity to be rid of coal, to leave it in the ground and never allow it to be mined. All of those things were a part of an entire well orchestrated, well financed, well thought through, well supported, with law school, academic work, and everything. I mean, they coordinated a campaign and ran a very successful war for almost 25 years.
I
And
remember when you were fighting those battles over on the air side. I was heavily involved on the solid waste side with RECRA, and I remember it was exactly that. And I remember one of our EPA administrators, Gina McCarthy, was caught on a hot mic saying, after they'd had one court decision go against them, but by the time it had worked its way through the courts, a whole bunch of power plants had closed. She famously said, "We won by losing."
yeah,
We know we'll just tie you up with these regulations and run the clock out on you. And I mean that's really, as you said, that's not what I think the Congress was intending to do when they put these regulations in place in the 70s and 80s, right?
no, it clearly wasn't. And the but they were good. I mean, as somebody who thinks about legal tactics, strategy, public policy, stuff like that, they were remarkable. I mean, to get to stakeholders and the finance community in New York and do it all. I mean, they did an amazing job, and the effect is they've now left the country vulnerable to the potential for blackouts because we don't have the resiliency that we need in key sections of the country. So, congratulations, you won, and all of us are more vulnerable as a result.
Exactly. Now, somewhere along the line in that regulatory battle of yours, you wound up basically in charge of the Kemper gasification project. Could you give an overview of what Kemper was to some of the folks here who might not have been paying attention to it back in the day?
With, as a lawyer, I need to be careful about the responsibility for all Kemper. But the good news is that actually my boss and the president of Mississippi Power and former general counsel of Southern Company, Ed Holland, became the CEO responsible for it. And he's our chairman of Powerscape Global because he witnessed the birth of the technology. And it's a remarkable story, really. People really forget that for 30 years after the last oil shock in 73, people may not remember, but coal prices got up into the $300 and $400 a ton mark. But some of my early work in the law firm was pushing back against long-term contracts that were incredibly painful because coal was valuable and natural gas wasn't on the horizon. And Southern Company, other utilities, and the DOE said, we've got to find a new way forward for coal. So they started the Power Systems Development Facility down in Wilsonville, Alabama, with the idea of finding new and different ways to use coal. And they looked at liquids, they looked at fuels. But at the end of the day, they focused on the niche of the market where you have low rank coal and you don't have a gasifier in the world that targets low rank coal. And so the PSDF built a 15 megawatt version of what would ultimately become, in some form, the Kemper projects, where we built the two largest gasifiers on the planet and operated them. They had developed that. We and others in the DOE, with DOE support, we developed that over about 10, 15 years worth of R&D, both basic and applied. And the scale up from what was done at Wilsonville and the PSDF was about 100 times at Kemper. And, somebody that I know and was actually one of the engineers in and around Kemper, who's now an executive with another company, was talking to her the other day, and she said, the problem with Kemper was the technology worked, but the economics with natural gas and the shale play, you couldn't say that coal was going to was going to provide you a way forward. And so when Southern Company had to decide between pursuing a $30 billion nuclear project or continuing to face cost overruns, given first of a kind issues with the bulk of the plant, not the gas fire, but the bulk of the plant, they made a rational business decision that they were going to close it. But before that, because we did have a vision, a big bet, if you will, that coal could be valuable, used in a valuable way. We developed a team that went around the world to look for new opportunities to deploy the technology. We spent a lot of time in China and Eastern Europe because they have a lot of lignite. And we had devised a way forward where the second of a kind would be in and around the lignite in Eastern Europe. And we were doing that in partnership with the Chinese because they had the EPC and the fabrication. And we had success. We were moving forward because the technology was tremendously attractive. And we had brought the world there, energy ministers from around the world and others. I actually had the honor of flying into Kemper on Secretary Moniz's plane, went on trade trips around the world with folks from the Obama administration because everybody realized that we had created something that the world needed. And when Southern made a very difficult decision to close those two gas fires, a number of us who had been around it had talked about it around the world, had met people around the world who were very interested in it and understood that if you don't have a way forward, for example, high ash Indian coal or low rank brown coal in Eastern Europe or low rank coal in Indonesia, you we don't have a machine that can handle the demand, and the demand is real because, as we probably can talk about here for a minute, the ammonia crisis that we find ourselves in is an indication that we have to put coal reserves to work here in the United States, but around the world, and particularly in those regions where you don't have natural gas supply or you've got to import LNG to make fertilizer. India's interest in gasifying 100 million tons a year of coal is driven by the fact that importing LNG from the Middle East is expensive, and the dependence upon China for your fertilizer supply, it leaves you vulnerable. And this last week, they found that out again when China restricted exports of fertilizer.
Playing
So
out in real
that's
time
what,
right now, right?
yeah.
Yeah. So tell us about PowerScape. I mean, it holds the IT or the IP for the technology that was used at Kemper, or
We took the engineering team, and in the intervening years, they improved upon the technology, and we have a patent pending for the new MFG gasifier that PSG owns, and we're about to go to our final patent application. Was working on it this morning, and it's really one of the most interesting problems in the world. We are offering up existing technology, but the thing that we lack is a plant. And believe me, people say, "Well, I love it. I see conceptually what it is. I've read the reports on Kemper. I understand that it worked. I understand that it's good, but you don't have a plant in existence." And what we do have is data and reports and lots of it because this was a DOE project that gives us confidence that we can build the new generation, taking all the lessons that we learned from Kemper and deploy it. And the reason I use the word often, fixated on that is because I saw this in the 30 or 40 people that we have committed to this effort. We all saw it. We knew what happened. We watched an F1 car go around the track faster than anybody could imagine with a bigger, more powerful set of dual engines in the gas fire. And we took the world there and we showed them that. And everybody knows it. And now our challenge is how do we take what we know, what we saw, what we did, and what we've improved and convinced the world that this is the way forward for coal in part. There are other technologies out there as well. We've been saying for some time, look, we got a gas fire to sell. We want to sell gas fires. But the truth is, I'm doing this because I have been on this, I have seen what was done to coal, and I believe that what was done with coal was wrong, which is where we start from. Number two, it was very stupid, and it left us vulnerable as a result of that. Number three is said we may not need it much of it here because we have natural gas everywhere, but there's some value to it, and particularly when it comes to resilience and production of new resources. And so in Wyoming right now at the Cheyenne Coal to Ammonia facility that we're a part of the team that's building it out, we want to take 1.5 million tons of Wyoming coal and convert it into 600,000 tons of ammonia and produce between 180 megawatts and 200 megawatts of excess power that we can sell to the local utility or to the grid. And we want to do that because we know it can be done. We were a part of doing it. We saw it and believed it, but we are bucking all the headwinds of the war on coal, and that's hard to do. And we've been at it in some form or fashion for the last 7 years, but very intensely the last 3 years. And John, you asked me this morning, where did you start? And the truth is, we started as Powerscape India because India had the need, and they said we're going to go above 1.2 billion utilization of coal, and we want to gasify 100 million. So our initial focus as a company was on India, and it was only the election of President Trump that changed our trajectory and gave us the opportunity to think about building here in the United States. And
So
that's what we're
Powerscape India is now Powerscape Global, right? Yes.
Yes, and the good news is the Indian folks have visited Kemper, knew the story, and they actually came to us independently and said we want to talk about it, and we submitted a proposal to them, and we lost to some bigger conglomerates, but they know the technology we have. If we can get the reference cases established here in the United States, they will, I think, be happy to see it because that 40% high ash coal is difficult to deal with. And the gasifier that we have actually can deal very, very well with ash because it's a solid that, along with the sand, provides, if you will, the frying pan for volatilization of the coal molecule and produces, the syngas and other components we need. And while we're not really seeing a big power need here in the United States, that's not going to be true around the world, but we're not seeing it here. But ammonia and chemical and CO2 for EOR are really the target markets. And that's why our platform and desire is to build out in Wyoming, North Dakota for purposes of the Bakken, West Virginia for AI, and to show that we can do bituminous because some of the changes that we made in the gasifier give a longer residence time for the coal molecules so we can do bituminous. And then our other effort is aimed at the Crow Nation as a partner with us in Powerscape Global for purposes of having a way forward for the sovereign nations of the United States to use their coal resources. And when we say that we're pro coal, we're pro coal. We need rail and plenty of it. We need distribution chains that still work. We got to have new ECP providers. We've got an entire infrastructure, including advocacy around coal and its utilization that has gone missing or deteriorated. So we are trying to build anew in an environment where much of what we had has been torn apart, diminished, and marginalized. And those are headwinds.
And the economic proposition of your technology, though, it's interesting because most of the people on the call here today, we're utilities, we're electricity people, we're power stuff. But in the scheme of things that you can do with that gas stream after you gasify the coal, electricity is kind of lower on the value chain, right? I mean, the ammonia and the other things that you can make from this syngas is even higher value, both economically and strategically. Is that right?
Unless you're a state that is committed to your coal resources, and because West Virginia, North Dakota, Wyoming, and Montana, those are coal states where people want to see the resource and they want to see it redeveloped. So I think there's plenty of room there. But let's face it, without 45Q, the economics of the United States would be very, very difficult. And now that they've levelized the 45Q, um, $85 a ton, that dramatically improved our economics vis-a-vis gas, even in areas that are gas rich. So I think we can get there on power, but the truth is we're not making that the initial focus, because if we can get the machine up and running and we can get the coal infrastructure supporting those, it then begins to be easier to deploy it for other purposes. And look, AI may drive it because there's a resiliency argument about having a coal supply as opposed to natural gas. So that's an issue for us. But then internationally, not so. We can, the economics, particularly in Eastern Europe, work for us for the production of power. And so we're going to have the opportunity to show some power projects as well. And look,
This is really a classic technology scale-up issue then. The old aphorism that everybody wants to be the first person to build the third plant, right?
right, right.
We got to get these first two built to take that early commercialization risk out of the equation for the future buyers.
In a very narrow window, when we have an administration that is the only administration in my memory that is actually advocating for new coal projects, and we have 3 remaining years to get that underway. We think that the political risk 3 years out is not that great because, one, the economics of the technology will prove it out in a way that renewables can't. Number two, it's got a CO2 component that is necessary for EOR in Texas, North Dakota, and other locations. And remember, the reason we did this was in part to demonstrate carbon capture. And so at Kemper, we were capturing 60% of the CO2 and using it for EOR in Mississippi. Now that we got $85 a ton for EOR and for sequestration, then we have a way forward that didn't even exist really at the time that Kemper was built. And you have the ammonia crisis, if I can call it that. So we've got some economic drivers, and yeah, it's going to take a lot. So a good friend of mine, Will Robertson, really remarkable man. He's been so patient and good to work with, and he said to me, Carl, this is hard. And he wasn't talking about my sales job. He was talking about the fact that coal gasification, getting it back into play is huge, and it's very, very difficult. And look, we welcome your prayers because at the end of the day, why I'm doing this, and I'm not making it about me, but why a lot of the, how should we put it, the senior members of our team, we have some young and vital people as well, I promise you, but the older people on our team, we sincerely, deeply, and totally believe that the diminishment and abandonment of coal resources in the United States is one of the most serious energy mistakes that we've ever made. And it's right up there with Germany closing its nuclear units and its coal units. We've done some equally stupid things here, and the result is we're all more vulnerable for it. And look, it's the grandkids. I want to know that my grandkids are covered by a diversified, robust, secure set of energy resources. And the war on coal was wrong. It was waged in really an unethical way, and it diminished America's resiliency and its strength, and it needs to be reversed. But John, ask me if I believe that we've won it or not.
Well, I was going to get to that question. Let me throw it out there too before we do, though. If anyone else has questions for Carl, please feel free to. I've got the chat open here if you'd like to put something in the chat, or else unmute yourself or do the wavy handy thingy or whatever. Happy to take questions from the audience, but yeah, let's go ahead and ask that question, Carl. I mean, we've got two big things moving now, right? We've got a friendly administration, and we've got this blow up in energy demand and electricity demand in this country related to AI and data centers. So are you ready to declare victory on the war on coal?
I was in my driveway about right after the administration came into place, and I got a call from one of our amazing members, Mike Moore, who knows more about the energy world nationally and internationally, I can imagine. I was sitting in the driveway. He says, Carl, we won the war. And I said, I don't know, Mike. This I don't. He says, no, no. We've turned the corner, and it's John. It's exactly what you said. We now have an equation that is this simple. You call it a megawatt, call it a kilowatt, call it whatever you want, but that now equals data. And we're not in data so that people can watch Netflix more comfortably. We're in data because we're in an out and out race to dominate an AI, because AI is frankly the new nuclear weapon. The way that it's being used in warfare all around the world tells you that this can't be neglected, and you can't lose a race on AI. So we're back to the moon mission. So there's a central organizing principle, which is we have to get rid of a lot of the legacy stuff that impedes the development of energy and the use of energy, so that we can convert those megawatts into bytes, and in turn for AI. And then I think there's the other thing, the reliability crisis that has been slow developing but is very real. And that I worked as counsel for our transmission organization for a while, and when NERC's not known for a lot of, hand waving, but
Yeah, they're
the
not
way that NERC,
propagandists.
no, they're not propagandists. And their alarms and alerts to us through FERC and everybody else is an indication that we've got to have an additional way forward for coal and all the resources, really. So I think there's the overall existential thing. Then there's the new demand in AI, where people have got to think about energy differently because it's a one-to-one equation. And then I think too that truth is out because old friend of mine, Karen Billups, always said, truth will out. And the truth is, this was a departure from rationality. It was ideologically driven. It was not a coherent energy policy that could work over the long term, and certainly not in the new world we find ourselves. And I believe that if we deal with CO2, which this is what we can do, and we are BACT for CO2 in the next administration. So if you said it was possible, well, we're actually capable of doing that. We can give you over 90% CO2, and we can put it to beneficial use, and we can tax it. So I think if you look at the business case, I think if you look at the reliability case, and then you look at the data case, truth demands that we redeploy coal, but we're running up against real problems because for a long time, we and coal were part of a dying industry, and coming down from 40% to 17%, I believe, of Europe. So we've got a lot of work to do to make coal as powerful a voice as it once was, really for good, not for market share, not to wave hands, but to say, look, the grandkids need this. We can't leave 700, 800 years of coal untapped when China's tapping theirs like mad in order to produce chemicals. And our friends around the world that only have coal, we've got the opportunity to take technology we developed over 30 years and get it to them, so that they can take our coal or use their coal, and that they have technology that'll meet all of the demands that EU and others are putting on it. So yes, I believe that we have won the war on coal, and I believe that the world is going to change significantly in the next 10 years to prove that to be true.
I think I agree with you, Carl. It's a remarkable time we live in. We got one question from the audience here. Carl, can you give some specifics on how the Trump administration has or will support coal gasification? And a second part to that is what about the proposed plant in Alaska that would use coal and get billions in foreign investments?
I heard we had another meeting of the National Coal Council yesterday, and it was a good discussion. It was a frank and robust discussion where the Alaska project, other projects, the you think about new coal and old coal. We have to preserve the existing units, and I spent most of my career defending those, and I'm still helping out as much as I can because I've been around a while. But those existing units, they're challenges, and it's a declining curve, age-wise, resource challenges associated with it, and other pressures. And because it's a difficult fight, but we have to have it because we have to preserve coal while we think about new coal. And we have to have the rail system, we have to have the mining systems, we have to have the infrastructure and the EPC. So we have to maintain existing coal. But the next thing that we have to do is think about the offense, which is great. The defense is in place. The offense has got to move forward with ideas and plans for new coal. President Trump has said he wants big, new, clean coal. And uh, me and a number of others on the Coal Council are putting a voice to that, saying, yes, defend the existing, but let's think about the new generation. And I'm I don't want that to be only a PSG gasifier. That doesn't work. We have to have technologies across the board that we can suite up. And the administration has been very, very good and is working with us very carefully. And our friends at Nettle are working with us to, we have a group that we call the American Advanced Coal Technology Initiative. And that is we don't care about what kind of technology we want to use, but we want to think about new ways forward. And DOE Secretary Wright, Secretary Burgum, who I had a chance to talk to a couple of weeks ago, and I pointed out to him, and he shared with me his concern that we've got at that time it was 1,054 days to get things moving for new coal, and now we're down to like 1,030 something, and or maybe it's 40. Somebody do that math. And we have to use the daylight that we've been given. We have to use the political oomph and the support that the president's given us, and we have to bring back together all of the research institutes, EERC, the Wyoming Energy Authority, University, West Virginia University, and and maybe the hydrogen hubs, because if you anchor the hydrogen hubs in coal and the conversion of coal, and we at the end of the day are hydrogen producers, but we never had at the base of those a coal resource. So if we can get the hubs operating and using coal, if we can gain and have this technological support that we need from all the research institutes, and we continue to defend existing coal, we have to we're fighting a holding action up until the time we can get new products and processes into the market. And then we couple them with our coal and we go abroad and say, we not only have the coal for you, we have the technology that'll meet all your local standards. So let's go.
Right, right. And one of the things I've heard President Trump say a couple of times now is that he doesn't want to go to ribbon cuttings. He doesn't want to go to groundbreakings. He wants to go to ribbon cuttings. They want to, he wants to build stuff. I mean, have you been feeling that level of support from the administration?
Yes, Secretary. When I talked to Secretary right after the first National Coal Council meeting, he and I had a few minutes at the end, and I said, "Look, we're here for new coal." And if you could have seen the smile on his face when we said new coal, it was probably among the most encouraging things that have happened to me in recent things, is seeing the absolute joy on his face as we talk about new projects. And as long as we've got Secretary Wright, Secretary Burgum, and frankly, administer the administrator of the EPA, Zeldin, then we've got the perfect triad to do everything you need to do to remove the overhang of the war on coal, including straightening out NSR. And if we can shed ourselves of some of the regulatory overhang that limits our ability to produce chemicals and kilowatts, then we're there. And it's a race. I believe that we're a part of the AI race. I believe coal's a part of it. And I think everybody in the rail and in the consumer business has to be a part of it, because the thing that we're worried about is losing market share, but also sites and rails. If we continue to diminish, our ability to go back and build anew at those sites is going to be limited. So we're interested in retrofits. But on the National Coal Council, my view is I am not there for Powerscape Global. I I, I love being there for Powerscape Global, but I'm there as a voice that has been chastened by 40 years of war. And I know that that war was wrong. I know that it yielded bad results. I know that it made the world more dangerous for all of us. And I know that you can't abandon something so valuable when the rest of the world, particularly China and India, value it so highly. And so winning the war on coal was the first good thing. Now we got to win the battle to get to the ribbon cuttings. And I think we got the right administration, the right approach to it, and we're going to get there. And we've said we've got a project now. It's Speed to Feed, which is using Wyoming as a reference case, and we've gotten encouragement from in EDC and others to say, keep at it. You're doing the right things. You're thinking the right things. And look, getting those pats on the back from the team that's calling you into the play is what we need. So when I go to the sideline now, I get the joy of knowing that I've got an administration behind us saying, get out there and get some more. So we're going to be the offense along with the Alaska Project, some folks in Pennsylvania, Louisiana. There are a number of new coal folks that we're going to work with. And my view is we got a great offense. Put us in, coach. We're going to win and we're going to get coal back in the play.
Carl, thank you so much. I know you're a busy guy. We've got 1,000 some days left to go, and you're going 90 miles an hour in all of them. So really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today and educate us on some of this opportunity and for all the good work you're doing for coal. Melinda, anything we need to cover to finish up here?
No, I think you got it all in the shameless self-promotion. We should be good.
Awesome. Well, thank you. Carl, again, really, really appreciate you taking the time to be with us here. And I will be following up with you on Jekyll Island and some of the other stuff we've discussed. So,
John, it's an honor to be serving with you. I enjoyed our time at Nettle where we connected on this. I think we both saw the research base that can be remobilized for coal. And time and getting to know you and the organization is important to us because we want to be a part of your future, and we appreciate it very, very much.
Thank you so much, Carl. Really appreciate it. And thank you for taking the time to share with us today. So everyone else, thank you for being here. We'll see you in Jekyll Island in April and then a week early in May for our next On Track Live. So thank you very much, everybody. Take care.
Bye.